Disc golf.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Like on cue.
Do you want me to go grab this binder?
Wait, binder.
Do you want your binder?
I'll get it. I'll throw them in.
Thanks, Mike.
Door was locked.
This Mike.
Door was, oh, well. Door was locked.
I don't have to do the press, right? Ask if everybody state
No, you
before.
don't need
We
to
just
do
skip
that
that.
anymore.
Yep. All right. So we'll start off with public service announcements.
Okay, on Saturday, May 18th, that's Armed Forces Day, and there will be a cookout over at the at Maxwell's, which used to be Agway in South Chelmsford. Hot dogs and hamburgers, soft drinks, and water, all for $1 each. It's a deal you can't pass up. Be serving food from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Please stop by. All the proceeds go to the Military Community Covenant Task Force to help out local military families and veterans. So, again, May 18th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Thank you.
All right. That moves us on to licenses. So it looks like we have a license here for change of manager, all alcohol beverages restaurants for Applebee's.
Yes.
You guys want to say anything, or you just?
You gotta go to the podium and they won't be able to hear you. Just introduce yourself and explain. We've done this before, but we do have a couple new members on the board.
Okay, good evening. My name is Matt Gerard. Taking over as the general manager at the Applebee's here in Chelmsford, replacing Denise McCarthy. So just wanted to go through and make sure everything's above board and get the license changed over into my name. I've been working in the food service industry for it'll be 20 years in July.
Do you have any questions? Do you have a motion?
So this is a public hearing, correct, Paul?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a public hearing.
Oh, anybody from the public? Any questions?
Okay, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, and unless there's an objection, we can waive the usual waiting period till our next meeting, since this is the same place, with all that's changing is the manager, so I'll make a motion to approve the change of manager for Applebee's to Matt Gerard as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that brings us to meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes for March 25th, 2019.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Everybody else said? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain.
So loud mics tonight.
And I'll make a motion that we approve but not release the executive session minutes for April 22nd.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. I'm going to assume that's the one I was not at.
Yes.
Yep. So, all in favor?
Aye.
I abstain. All right, so now we need to schedule the town accountant and manager's performance appraisals. How do we want to So last year, we each, how did we do it last year? Everybody did Paul's separate?
We did them separate and sent everything to Jeannie, who consolidated everything, since we can no longer do it the way we had done it before.
Okay, and then last year, too, we also redid the appraisal form for Paul. So we'll use that. And do you want everybody okay with doing it the same way? We'll use the new appraisal form, which we approved last year, with the new matrix, and then we'll all do it separate and submit it to Jeannie.
Okay,
Rosielli.
so when are we going to get that, and when is it going to be required to be back?
We can get it out
We can
this
get it
week.
tomorrow, yeah.
Yeah,
The form's
I mean,
done,
the form's done, yeah. When have it back by the next meeting?
Well, we should, when are
Well-
we going to do the review? We're going to do the review the first meeting in June, or next meeting, we're going to do it. the
No, I
review
guess that's
next
too
week.
quick.
And we probably have a busy meeting, the May
Yeah.
20th.
So which one do you want to do it at?
June, what?
The dates in June are the 3rd and the 17th, and then the next meeting after that's July 8th.
I think June 3rd's enough time. We'll have them submitted to Jeannie by the end of this month, and that gives her a few days to get them all consolidated.
George, is that all right with you?
Sure.
Can we aim to get them to Jeannie by the 28th at the latest?
May 28th, okay.
Just aim if there are extenuating
Is
circumstances.
that enough time for her?
Should be, yeah. Yeah.
So May
Because they're
28th.
typed, so it's a cut and paste. It shouldn't be retyping anything.
So May 28th is our homework assignment for the 6-3 meeting.
I would say if she feels that that's not enough time, we can do it earlier, but I would say that that would be the drop dead date for them.
So Paul, if you bring it up to her tomorrow and she says they need more time, just
Sure,
let us
I'll
know.
Yeah,
And for
she's away.
town accountant also,
For Darlene, are we using the same, are we using that same form?
the same form we've used before, the new form.
I mean, the new form.
I don't know what the consensus was on that, if we were going to use the new form or the same one that we had been using before.
I thought from what I remember, the new one was for Paul and the old one was
for-
sufficient for
Okay.
the accountant, because it's a,
I do know the new one is specific to a town
it
manager.
really is, like
Yeah.
it's, there's a lot in there that just doesn't apply, so the old one seems to be adequate.
So Paul, can you have the old form also sent out?
Yes. Yep. And I think Jean's away on vacation for a couple of weeks at the end of May into early June, so I'll get back to you on that.
And just as a refresher, will you also send last year's, for
Yep.
results for last year, so we have a baseline to go off of?
These mics are wicked sensitive.
Yeah.
I'm hearing keyboard strokes on a laptop. It's okay, it's not you. You've got 3 mics in front of
Microphone's
you.
on the floor or something.
All right, we're all set with that. Board of Selectmen goals and the town manager goals?
A lot of these have been done.
So we cross them off?
That's a good thing.
Yeah. Winner, chicken dinner?
I mean, so if we set the bar too low, we can add some. Or it lets us know that we have flexibility and,
Well,
One of
these are
the-
last year's, right?
Yeah.
So you're just calibrating right now on whether they keep going or not?
So another first one, Board of Selectmen will review board policies. One of the things that I think would be a positive here, and this was brought to attention not by me, I did not think of this, but was coming up with either a mission statement or a vision statement for the board.
I think it's kind of decided by law, what we do, what we can do.
No, it's something different.
no, this is, I feel like that our duties are outlined, but I mean, in terms of what each particular board makeup wants to get done, I think it's an overarching vision or mission statement.
So you mean it would change every year?
No, so I'm the one who brought it up, so I'll explain.
Okay.
I was thinking, I guess in a couple contexts. One, is there a common vision statement for the town? Because in different places you look, there's different messaging, right? So is there something that we would want to work together to develop a vision statement for the town? And then that sort of led to, well, should we have a mission statement for the Board of Selectmen? And that really is more around, what's your overall purpose, and what's that? It's maybe one sentence, two, that sort of gives you an overarching glue that all your actions and everything that, we do to help move the town forward can coalesce around. I think it would be
personally
worth-
thought it was a nice
I
idea.
think it would
I
be
think it
worth
is a
at least
nice
trying
idea.
to draft something. If we don't like it, we can always throw it out, but.
And I think it's one of those things where, when you have, this tends to be really flexible and things come up quickly. So sometimes things are going to happen that just don't, like, they're going to work at cross purposes. But I think so long as it's with the understanding that it is a flexible living idea, I just,
What do you think, Paul?
Well, I think that don't you need the mission and vision statement in order to establish goals?
yes, you really do. And then to determine whether or not, like, to prioritize the goals, to see whether or not you can add more if you've accomplished a bunch.
And not only that, as five of us sitting here, you come up with something like that, it kind of puts a point in space down the road that we're all aiming towards, so we have a clear idea of what we're all sitting here for, not just to show up every week and serve the town as best we can. More of a, the goal of the Board of Selectmen is whatever, to drive, economic growth in the town. That would be a little too specific, but, even if it's just to maintain the quality of the standard of life and well-being in the town. But I think it just lets everybody know that as a team, we sit up here with the primary goal of X, and from that come the goals and objectives over the next year.
And I think the aspect of being a team where we're all working together towards something, as opposed to just,
Each 5 independent goals and objectives, and 5 independent visions of what we want the town to be.
running off in 5 directions and pulling it apart, So I don't think it helps to work at cross purposes, and I think that it would, it could just help build a better team.
So let's do this. How about a couple of us take a shot at it and bring back an idea, and if you like it, great. If not, then we don't do it.
Fine.
I think I did a little bit of Googling, and I have seen other towns do that, and I thought it was, some of them I read were pretty, I thought, well done, a little in general, but you could clearly see the results in the town, so.
I think also that, given that it's a master plan year, where it's the time to start that committee, I think that can also help hone that as well, so,
I think it can help all the boards and committees.
things, yeah.
So,
I'll work with you on it, or
Absolutely.
we'll work with somebody on
we can't do 3.
it. Right,
Right.
so what 2 do you want?
That's up to you.
I don't care.
If Virginia and Cal want to work on it, that's fine.
Okay. And then looking at the list of goals here, just from last year, Board of Selectmen review board policies. I know what that was about. I'm not sure we necessarily did that.
Yeah, I was going to take a stab at it. I got started, but I didn't get very far with it. I can take that on and do something with that.
Okay. We're still monitoring the Oddfellows building and the Fisk House usage, but from my understanding is it's starting to move along a little bit.
Right, yeah,
You sent out an email a couple of weeks ago about
Yeah,
it.
and they
so-
basically got 13 months until the lease expires, so something's gonna happen.
When you look at the greater picture of the downtown area of what's going on between, the Center Village and their action plan and what they've got going on between, all the grass, the benches, the parks, the trees, and everything they've got money for. The tree committee looking at the town common and redesigning that, along with the DPW and the potential for lining the streets with some nice trees again. And I really think that, 5 years out, if the Oddfellows building comes into play there, that you could really, and then you get the grist mill opening up. I think it really could be.
Maybe Acton Road as
Fantastic.
well.
Speaking of trees and pollen,
Oh no.
I'm just saying that, it seems that overarching trends in the country have resulted in a heavier pollen load, because
What you should do is come to tree committee.
I probably should. I'm sure
I'll let
they
you know.
already know. But yeah.
There is a newsletter that comes out every 2 weeks. It's well
Oh,
worth
we
the
get a
read.
Treely yours, yeah. Full of good puns.
Freely yours, yep. The FEMA grant out at Williamsburg,
That's in process.
It's just about, that project's just about done.
yep.
So that one, you can strike that one. That one's done.
UMass Lowell West Campus, Paul?
Done.
Civic Day.
Well,
Well, what are we
is
gonna
the
do about
UMass Lowell campus done, or is that something that
I
we're
mean,
still
it's-
going to?
It's bought by
It's
a
been
private
auctioned.
owner.
What we're waiting for is we're waiting for a development plan.
Okay,
And that may involve zoning changes or some aspect of action by the town. I mean, obviously, if they come in and submit a subdivision, then it just goes before the planning board under the allowed zoning, but that seems a bit unlikely, given the amount of money that's at stake.
But just to be clear, it's owned by a private owner.
Right.
If they want to come in and cut down every tree,
right, that's
With
just a
dirt
whole,
mounds
that's a
in the
whole
middle.
other process, yeah.
Yeah.
you can't say it, so we just have to wait.
So that's done.
Yeah.
So about Civic Day, I've been hearing from a mom involved with Girl Scouts about, she does work for other towns, but some towns have a town cart or a community cart that has informational materials about the town, that has just resources, brochures and stuff, that goes to different town events, like farmers markets or parades or whatever, that can serve to inform people in the town about what is going on and what is happening. And she was trying to get the Girl Scouts involved as part of a community service project. So I think that if we can work on Civic Day, and then I think some of these civic goals have to actually make it into the schools, and we have to get the parents involved, and we need to
Push it forward.
well, we need to from the ground up, people need to be involved, and if you can get the younger families involved, you end up with better civic engagement overall. So,
Paul, and Pat, maybe you know this too, but does the chair of the board get appointed to the board of the civic committee?
No, we are required to have one member of the board on it, and Glenn was that member, but I don't think
Okay.
that, we didn't have any other
I was kind of surprised on the website when I saw my face there.
Oh. Well, you're also, on a totally different thing, you're also, your face is on the show.
The show protect too, which I didn't, I could show the liaison.
That was,
Well, but Tricia explained that to me. It's the chair of the appointing authority.
Right.
That's why you get your picture there.
it's not a good picture. All right. So, back to, so what's since I'm on the civic committee now,
Well, you don't have to be, but yeah,
right,
that's a good
but
idea.
do you want me to, there's only 3 members, I think, on it, from what I saw.
Is
So,
there even that many?
but I can reach out to them and see if they have any interest in fostering this along. I mean, I would imagine.
Is this something that could easily be combined with the annual volunteer day, where you have something sectioned off for civic, or is that too much? I'm just wondering if it would simplify it.
Well, I
It's a
think
different
it
kind
does
of
more
volunteer.
than that. I mean, it's
Bless
actually, when that committee was first formed, part of its goal too was to bring forward recommendations for naming things. That's why this room is named the Dennis Reddy
Okay,
Room, and that's why we have a plaque for Carol Clevin up at outside the school administration office, and I think the Ralph Houselander Street behind Old Town Hall. That's part of what they were doing too, to identify people that were deserving of something to be recognized for, and then deciding what and bringing it to the
So-
board.
okay.
So leaving civic committee alone, but civic day is something that probably could be rolled
Yeah.
into volunteer day. I actually thought I don't know why, I thought it was gonna be all part of one, but. So maybe we can work on just rolling civic day and a volunteer day, or part of it?
So is the goal then to create a civic day, or is the goal to get the civic committee off the ground
Rejuvenated, yeah.
or revitalized?
I think that's a big part of it, is to get the civic committee
I feel
rejuvenated.
like they're intertwined.
Well,
But-
they're yeah.
Because you're looking, I mean, either way, you're looking to increase.
I would say if you're revitalizing the civic committee would be behind putting together the civic day, right?
Ideally.
So
Right,
is
and
the big,
perhaps
is
with
it,
help.
how do you want the goal? Is it to create a day, or is it something
Well,
with the
when-
committee?
Well,
And-
originally, I think the goal from Glenn last year, because he was the one that was kind of pushing this, was to have a place where all the tables were set up, where people could go around and hear
So
about
it was
whatever.
just the day was the goal then?
Well, he wanted people to be able to see what the different committees in town did
Okay.
and see if there was one they could volunteer for. So we didn't have the Dead Sea Scroll of volunteers that we read for open committee seats every week.
So
Every 2 weeks.
when the Civic Committee was first established several years ago, representatives did go to the volunteer fair with that list
Yep.
and tried to recruit people for those positions. So it basically could be part of the Civic Committee's responsibility to attend that volunteer fair, and that could be kind of the civic day. Because I think if you were to do something like this, I don't know what kind of turnout you'd have, really.
Depends on how you publicize it and how you, I mean, that's a huge issue with communication in general and getting word out about things. I think that we don't have enough communication.
I have a suggested goal on that.
Fantastic, let's hear it. What is it?
Why don't we
Finish this
the
Yeah,
out.
let's finish
rest?
this.
Okay.
So I'll go and reach out to the Civic Committee and see their thoughts on it, and then I'll report back, and we can swing back around, because I think if you have everybody mobile, coming to a volunteer day, why not kill two birds with one stone and have tables set up for Civic Day too? But I'll reach out to them and see what their feeling is on it.
Who's left on that committee?
Not a clue. I'd have to go back and I was trying to send them emails and call
Kathy
them.
O'Brien on that committee?
Yeah,
I think she
yeah.
is.
It was last
So there
week. I
was,
was
the
looking
other
at it.
thing was that they named this room, right, after Dennis Reddy, so they were charged to do that as well, weren't they?
Yeah, right.
Doing
Yep.
somebody else. I thought that was like the original purpose.
Mhm.
All right, 6, monitor the effects of tax classification study committee. One of the things I'm curious about that is,
That says the efforts.
The efforts,
Oh,
not
right.
effects.
Let's change
Yeah,
the
I'm
word
sorry,
to
efforts.
Difference.
sorry.
The committee's done.
Yes, I know it's done, but what I'm curious about now is because one of the things we had said was we wanted to then follow, after the split tax was approved, what was happening from an assessor's standpoint, as far as values, and sort of track it. Because, again, this was said last year, when we were in this debate, that nobody's ever, once it's gone through, tracked the results. Is there any type of sort of study done after the fact to see what happens to the values of the buildings, abatements, how much tax revenue actually comes in? Is there any shifting going on? Do things come back to the residents over time? Do the taxes end up back on the residents over time? Those are all things we sort of wanted to track. So now that the efforts are done and the split rate was approved, I want to make sure it gets tracked so we can. There was this talk that we'd be, if we had the right controls in place, that we would sort of be the guinea pig if we were tracking it, so that we could, finally have a fully proven study as far as which way it worked. And so I don't know how to do that, and I'm wondering if we could maybe talk to Frank Reen about if there are any sort of matrix that he could use to sort of gauge what's happening now with the split tax rate.
Isn't that part of his presentation that he gives every November anyway?
It might be part of his presentation in the fall, but I think what Ken's getting at is it's going to take a year or 2 years to kind of
5.
just, right, to really
To just
track
let
and
things
see what
settle
the
out.
data's saying and the effects that it's having in multiple parameters. And I don't know if there's other metrics that are involved besides the assessed values,
Well,
but that's
what I'm-
certainly one of the
What I'm
major
curious
ones.
what I'm curious about is, this argument was made that over time, the values of commercial buildings in town will start to retreat slightly. The taxes, they'll file for abatements, the taxes will go down when you see sales happen, and that revenue that's needed will then shift back to the residents. And so I'm curious if that, over the next 3 to 5 years, will happen. And from what I've read, it takes about 3 years for that to start to happen. It doesn't happen the first year because the abatements really don't have a leg to stand on. Second year, there's now, because of the increased taxes offsets the revenue coming out of these buildings, they can file the abatement. And then the third year is when you see the full swing of it. So I'm just wondering if since we've done it, we're one of the first towns that have done such a large shift. I don't want to miss the opportunity to actually track the results to share with other communities. Does that make sense?
Sure. I don't think we're
No,
gonna
Paul, what I'm looking at you for
Yeah.
is, do you think it's going to yield any results, or do you think it's a waste of time?
No, I mean, I think we can track the information with Frank and the assessor's office, yeah. I'm not sure we'll have something conclusive results in a year, but we can.
No, I
we'll have
agree.
Data, we'll gather data, sure.
But I already know, because I asked, that
Yeah.
they've seen, I mean, they're meeting every Thursday night now because of the amount of abatements they had come in. So I'm curious as to how many abatements came in commercial, how many abatements
Right.
came in residential, how many were granted, not granted.
Right.
It's more than they've seen in years past, substantially more. And I want to hear about
Sure.
what that is and what it looks like.
So we'll do that.
Number 7. We doing anything with the rezoning of Route 40?
Well, the committee is working to come up with a final meeting date. We had something scheduled for, we've had to move it out to towards the end of this month due to other commitments, but we have a presentation getting put together. And the committee, one of the results, sort of the side effects of that, was that a new overlay was built and designed to encourage age-in-place communities or elder care communities. And so we'll see. It hasn't
So-
been,
so my
it hasn't
understanding is the
been,
committee-
nothing official has happened
So,
yet
right,
with the planning
so
board.
the
So-
committee's putting together a final report for the planning board, and one of the planning board meetings, Mike Waltz reviewed kind of what we envisioned going in that detailed report, and they agreed that was a good thing to do. And there'll be a PowerPoint with that. So there'll be a recommendation coming out of the committee, and then I guess the other thing to consider is whether there will be 23 contiguous properties to acquire. You know,
Right.
I mean, whether in the end it makes sense, I don't know, because there's a lot of dynamics going on right now.
Okay,
So,
so that we leave on there.
yeah.
Yeah. I would assume that it would probably get picked up by the master plan update committee.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, so it sort of falls to the planning board at this point.
I mean,
You-
ideally,
You might want to put some language in there, like considering the recommendations of the committee, because they've done a lot of work in the last several months and taken in a lot of input from different stakeholders and committees and boards in town.
So so
I mean, there's been a lot of work done.
to set expectations and understand for anybody watching, that committee can come back with whatever they want. They deliver it to planning board. Planning board can take all of it, some of it, or none of it.
Correct.
Master plan could sit there and say what their vision is for that piece of land. But if one owner rises out of that mess,
So now you're raising another question. Should rezoning be in the Board of Selectmen objectives?
I mean, it's not within our purview. That's the sort of thing that the planning board,
Unless you're trying to get some things in the objectives around economic development, and I have other suggestions too, if we were going to do that.
I
But
think our task was to form the committee, and that's why that was there. That was our job. And so we formed,
we were appointed by the planning board chair.
okay.
so now that raises another, should we just strike it since it's zoning?
I don't know.
I think the natural progression is continues with the planning board and probably into the master plan update committee, because I think you,
Speaking of
I think
planning
you,
board.
I think you'd incorporate the Route 40 study into the whole update of the master plan.
I'm sure it will.
Yeah, so I think that's.
So
why
does
we
any of
worked out.
this involve,
The Board of Selectmen?
Anything
Yes.
we
Probably
do?
not for the next year, no.
No,
Originally it did
because,
because there was a
Right.
40R, right? I mean,
But there is nothing now.
oh, no, as I said originally, that was the
Originally,
reason.
yeah.
It was because it was a totally different.
East.
Yeah.
So a 40R would involve the Board of Selectmen?
Yeah,
all right, so we're striking that.
I think so.
We can always bring it back next year.
and I think it'll be in a different form next year. It'll be a different thing.
On number 8, I know that's done and behind us. Is that something that will rear again?
Well, I can tell you this, they have broken ground and they are have commenced with construction of the facility.
Will it only come up if we bring it up, or will they
Yes.
approach us again?
I'm not bringing it back up to you guys.
But will they approach us again? Will they come to the town and sweeten
they-
an offer, make a better offer, make?
Well,
What do you mean, make a better offer?
I don't know. I don't know
There
if they
is
would
no better
come.
offer to be made, it's just,
Yeah, and
I
speaking,
agree with what you're saying, but would they ever come and sort of court the
They-
town?
I think it's a
Well, the
question of whether you want to proactively.
Middlesex Regional Emergency, I mean,
Ken.
would they,
I'm sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
From what you're saying, it sounds like a question of whether, if there's an objective in here that says that you want to go out and proactively consider this again. If somebody comes to the town, if we don't know whether that's coming or not, I mean,
Okay.
I don't,
So we're all set with 8.
well, all I can tell you is that
I-
they've commenced construction and the facility is built for expansion. And so the question then becomes, at what point does Chelmsford or another town join the facility?
But whether it's on here or not, we can consider it.
At any time, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So is it off or on?
I'm striking it.
I'd strike it.
Okay, all right.
Number 9. I'm assuming that's gone.
God.
I'm
second
going to,
part
Paul, I'm
of
going to help you out there with that sigh. So so you have, again, we're back to the 3 or 4 pieces of our public safety that we talk about. And again, this
And
was,
whether or not it's financially feasible and whether or not we're letting money run out of this town. So, I mean.
but I think it's a piecemeal approach. I mean, for me, I would rather look at the way the fire stations are laid out in the town first.
We tried that.
No, we tried all of it at once.
I mean, if you want to have discussions about $1 all over again, that's cool. I mean, I think that the discussion is going to be the same until something falls down. Or we go into the red. I think that that until you get different people involved, it's not going to change.
What are we trying to accomplish?
Can you, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you say again, Ken, where you were going with?
Well, for me, I just don't think that you're going to get a lot of buy-in when you look at, reevaluating the ambulance in the town, the fire station layout in the town, dispatch. If you try to accomplish all that at once, it's too much of an undertaking. For me, I looked at it and said, look at the amount of fire stations we have in the town. We have 5. How many towns actually have 5? I only know of one other town that has 5. Most towns, there are several towns larger than us that have 2. The reason why we have 5, we all know the history. There was a train, track that ran through town that shut the town in half when the train parked. So,
It's a highways.
Between the trains and the highways.
Highway,
Yeah.
really.
well, now it's the highways.
Yeah.
So my question is there a way to better, now we know this building, the fire station here is not moving.
Right.
But we do have 2 or 3 other stations that are in need of repair. We're buying pumper truck or engine trucks for stations at a clip of $800 a piece. But before we go buy 5 new, engines, I just would rather we assess where we're at.
I mean, go ahead, bring it up again, go for it. I nominate you, Ken.
No, I think there's merit to the fire station consideration, because here's the problem. If the outcome is nobody wants a longer response time from a fire station, then you're right, we can never get there, because by definition, consolidation means a longer response time. However, if the concern is in terms of the safety of the responders, then that does matter, because we heard the concern about how do you properly staff a fire apparatus? You have 4 people on it.
Right. Well,
And unless you're going to have 20 people on duty, then the other way to do it is to consolidate the stations, which makes it safer for the first responders
right.
when they show up,
So
as well as the financial implications.
Right, and it goes back to, the first people on the scene, whether it's medical, fire, whatever it is, are usually police and Trinity.
It's definitely police first.
Right,
After
so
that,
police
then-
first,
Yeah.
Trinity usually they're,
Depending upon where.
if it's not a fire,
Right.
is it usually police Trinity or
Still all 3.
still all 3? Okay.
An accident, yeah. Depends
So,
on
but
where.
we're not talking about really, what we care about in an emergency situation that's medical is, Trinity gets there as fast as possible in police.
And that was the point of the 5-station configuration, was to have
Right.
immediate response, because most of the calls were medical or accident.
Right.
And then that got flipped over in terms of the,
So when people talk about a response time to an actual fire,
right.
what worries me is, my understanding is that, like, when the fire happened up in North Chelmsford at Zesties, the first truck showed up, there were 2 guys.
Mhm.
By code, or whatever you want to call it, by standard, if you have one on the truck and one on the ladder, he's not supposed to step off the ladder and onto the roof to fight the fire until he's got someone behind him. So would you rather someone shows up at 5 minutes that can't really fight the fire and then wait for the second truck to get there at 8 minutes, or would you rather 4 guys show up at 6 minutes and can immediately start fighting the fire? So that's sort of what I'm curious about. Like, what would the increased call times be to get 4 guys there as a team as a whole? And if you went down to 3 stations, you put 4 guys in every station, and then what would the response times be? And what would the change be? And again, we're not talking about medical, we're not talking about car accident, that type of, you're talking about a fire. I'm curious about what the response time would be to a fire for the fire trucks to get to, fully functional. And because I've heard of a few fires now, well, I can think of 3. One where we had Lowell got there and was set up and, with a stronger team than us. And then there was another one where, they showed up and the hydrant was dry and you had 2 guys hoofing hoses down the street. The second truck showed up and didn't know what the guys were doing running down the street with hoses. And, meanwhile, you have a house fire going on. So I just think that it's, for me, if it was my house, I'd rather 4 guys show up a minute or 2 later than 2 guys show up and can't fight the fire. So I'm just curious, can we do a study? Can the calculations be done to say, if and I know there's a computer program that will do it. You put the stations in different spots and calculate the response times. What that would mean to get 4 guys, are we talking 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes? That's the way I would look at that, that's the piece I'd want to bite off.
You
So
have
you-
to put a tremendous amount of people on. It's
the same people.
No, you just reduce the number of stations. so you
Well,
get
that's
4
right, yeah,
four
that's what
people
we're
on an
gonna do. With
apparatus.
4 stations, we're gonna gain 8 people a shift, aren't we? Is that what we're gonna do?
No, if
No,
you went to
it's
3
the same people.
stations,
If you went to 3
You need
stations, you'd
one.
have 4 in a shift.
I
You have
mean,
12.
to divide in amongst the other 4 stations, so we're gonna gain a couple people on each station. 'Cause-
Yes, you gain a couple people in
Yeah.
each station, but it's still the same number of
But the
employees.
standard is 4, 2 on, 2 off.
right.
And if the way to do that is with 3 stations.
I mean, for me, I would rather not lose a firefighter in a fire because you got 2 guys show up, one's on the ladder, he sees something going on in the fire and says, the heck with it, I'm going in anyways, and we lose a firefighter. I would rather 4 guys show up and can do the job correctly.
So basically, you're just asking for a report, not necessarily a study.
I just think there
Wants
needs
to
to be an
do an
evaluation.
assessment.
Yeah, an assessment of what the different combinations and outcomes could be and what the trade-off is.
I think there is the aspect of department policies too that affect that. So there is the computer program that, you
Yeah.
can go and play
all
SimCity
falls on
all you
Gary,
like.
right?
But,
Yeah.
I mean, some of this too is the overall policies and procedures of the department and how things are handled too.
Mhm.
So,
Right, I mean, I think the one constant is we know this station isn't moving, the one in the center.
Exactly.
And so therefore, you'd have them do some simulations in terms of this station and then,
But we just did a roof on one.
right.
And my understanding, there might be some asbestos in another.
Mm-hmm.
We're buying a new engine truck. We're going through all 5 systematically.
Yeah.
So we just bought one this year.
Yeah.
is it 5 in the next 3 years or,
Yeah,
yeah?
Yeah,
So-
they're 800 grand apiece.
Yeah.
So if you only need 3, that saves us 1.6 million. That's a lot of money towards, well.
and you still have the staffing concerns, the safety concerns.
Yep.
Because right now, you only have one other station that has 3 people on it.
Right, but if you avoid two engine trucks, that's 1.6 towards the building of a
Right.
new station somewhere.
Mhm.
That might
And a new
need to
station
be
is
happen
only 4,
to be
Ish,
centrally
5.
located.
if it's a smaller, not a headquarters, right? Isn't that what Drake had just spent? 4?
Yeah, you're talking 5 million.
Yeah, so
5
we're,
now,
but
'cause it's been a
1.6 is a
couple
third of the way
Yeah.
to 5.
Mhm.
And that's just with trucks. I mean, we haven't even talked about, if you build a new station, what you do with the old one, sell that off or whatever, So there's, I don't want to be putting a new roof on one station and then decide, yeah, let's do it next year, and now we're going to be tearing down a building we just put a couple $100,000 on a new roof.
Yeah.
So that's my thought. Anybody else?
Sounds like you're reaching a conclusion rather than putting something on our goals.
I-
No, but I think it ought to be.
I
I am
understand
open,
where you
I'm
start
open to
from.
any result.
Well, yeah, I understand, but I think, it's kind of like what Virginia said, we want to do an assessment and do the
Right,
simulations.
exactly.
And then see what we get from that.
100%. But I'm trying to explain why I'd want to do, I'm laying an outcome out, not because I think it's going to go there, but as a
As
reason
an
why I
example
want to see
scenario.
the study, why I think it needs to be done.
And it's to indicate that he has spent time thinking about this and has reasons
Several
behind.
nights.
Well, the concern then becomes, right, if you then come forward with the request to leave as is, and they say, well, should we be funding an apparatus or two, what that plan is, then at least you've got some
Right.
Reason,
credibility and reason to say this is
Right.
why we should go forward with it.
numbers.
I will never give the reason just because.
No.
No, it has to have numbers
To explain
behind
them
it.
what the
Yeah.
alternatives are.
Last year's did.
Finances.
Are we good on 9?
Finances by definition.
Yeah. You're going to rework it, right?
Yeah. You all set? Okay. 10, I'm delivering the letter to Fred this week for the age-friendly community. And that starts a process. I know he's got his sleeves set up. He's rounded out like 6 of them at this point. So he's well on his way. I mean, to me, the letter gives the endorsement, and that starts the whole, or finishes the whole application project. It starts the whole application process, and then, so it's in their hands at this point.
So I have a question about this.
If we're accepted into the application process, we're still going to have to work on this objective, right? You're not done after,
4
Well-
stages?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's something that's an ongoing thing.
It's
We're working with
ongoing.
the Council on Aging with.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Emily, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay. I have a question about this. The whole concept of an age-friendly community is a walkable, well-designed, multi-use setup. It's walkable, no,
That's
because.
part of it.
Yeah, it
with,
is.
With good transportation, and so those components, like you want something that
It's
is
livable is the way they.
livable,
So it
and-
might be walking, it might be transportation,
but it's going to be a
It's
combination
caring
of those.
it's caring for medical concerns, being dementia-friendly. It's also recognizing and valuing that as we age, we can still contribute to the community and the economy, and many people want to keep working, maybe in a different way than they did, in a post-retirement career. So it's a lot of different things, but the walkable part, it's more, it encompasses transportation and walking, being able to get
Yeah,
to
one of
where
the
you want to
sleeves is
be. It's-
transportation /
Right.
walking. I wouldn't say the focus is heavily on the walking, but,
No, but it's there. It's to
all
reduce.
right, so keep
So-
going with this.
Go
Where
ahead.
did you want to go with the walking?
So, just looking at some of the things that this outlines when it talks about maintaining access to commercial and workspace and living space and having a good connectivity with all of this. This is also, this is just a life-friendly community. This is that sort of setup, and what the economics report consistently, time and again, is that elders who stay in their communities contribute more than elders who come in because they have those connections. They know that they've always gone to whatever pizzeria, they've always done the business there, and so they tend, because they know the commercial base better, because they know the area better. They spend more of their money locally, and obviously I can't pull up the things I've read on that, but it is an asset in terms of economics. But looking at this, I feel like I want to know about functional, life-friendly communities too, because if we have good
The biggest needs are
transportation,
transportation and housing.
And-
Those have been
and-
identified.
and you've got to have safe, like outdoor spaces, it also involves green space. You've got to have some place to be able to move. You've got to have sidewalks involved.
Mhm.
So you can't be giving into some like kitty that is nominally for sidewalks that, is at a significant devalued amount. You've got to actually put in sidewalks, and you've got to have affordable housing as part of that. You cannot be putting into a kitty at the minimum value. You've got to actually have space for people to live and walk and play and work and
Well,
all
maybe
of this.
we send a message to the planning board that we want more sidewalks in their plans.
Up our rate for the 53G.
But what is interesting is I was talking to a client in my office today, and they just had a new baby, and they said to me, they live sort of near Friendship Park, and they said, oh, and it's really great. There's a sidewalk the entire way that we walk to get to, and I was like, oh, and I had to think of where they live, but I was like, wow, that actually makes the park more
Huge.
user-friendly.
It's huge.
That was a dog park. You remember, it was Bob
Yeah.
Joyce who sat here and said, you should have a sidewalk all the way down Richardson Road.
And now
we
it's
did
done.
it, and it's
Yep.
done.
And that's why it was put in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
There's
Well,
a,
there's 3 schools there as well. I mean,
right, but it, yeah,
Yeah, but it wasn't always all the way down.
right, it ended
So-
Sidewalks.
Yeah, but that's why you need the sidewalks, too.
You need sidewalks to schools, you need them to parks, you need to be able to
Safer
walk,
schools.
you need to be able to walk around a neighborhood without climbing onto someone's lawn as cars pass. So,
Okay, so we're keeping the goal for age-friendly community.
Yeah.
I would also suggest that if you're interested, Governor Baker has an entire document on how he reimagines Massachusetts for age-friendly that he put out a couple years ago.
will
And
that involve spending more money on transportation and roads?
Communities are, and he's got examples of what communities are doing in that, so. And it's all under the age-friendly initiative.
Paul, when do they meet the age-friendly community? Is that the last Wednesday? of the
Last
month?
Wednesday of the month at 9 a.m. at the senior center.
I'm sure they must have that document by Baker, though. 'Cause they-
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I know I saw it, I didn't read it, but I did see it on the state website. All right, 11. Should we try that again?
It looks like, I mean, well, you've got more and more coming through. And I know the recycling committee is working on ways to figure out how to reduce plastic bag consumption.
So
You know.
Lowell made it illegal, right? Or-
Yes.
Correct.
It's common. It's
But at Lowe's, when you
commonplace.
walk in, they still give you a plastic bag.
But it has an effect, I think it doesn't think it becomes effective.
No, they
until
didn't
July
have
1.
bags for a while.
Right, but I
And
think
now
they-
they've got
The
this
Lowell,
new,
any store under 3,000, or under 10,000 square feet
Over.
could still use the plastic bags.
but I gotta think that's,
Lowe's is
Yeah,
not
Lowe's
that.
is definitely-
but Lowe's, it's a different
but it
type of
becomes
plastic
effective.
bag.
It's
Is it
different- it's a thicker
reusable?
plastic.
Yeah,
No.
it has to do with how thick it is, too, yeah.
It's the microns. It's however 4 microns or whatever.
Yeah, because it's like using a Glad trash bag now.
Yeah, you can go with
Yeah.
the thick one, right, the
Yeah.
recyclable one.
Those are,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, interesting.
You just need to
It's
recycle.
honestly, people need to bring washable canvas, like heavy-duty bags.
So do we do anything, or we let the state handle that? Because it seems like
There
it's
is,
going
there
that
is
way.
a state effort to
I know.
make it a ban statewide again. I'm not sure where that's
So
going.
again, I think it's the chicken and the egg, you
Say
know,
it, do
the state, the state house only moves when there's enough political wind. Otherwise, they sit there and let it die in committee.
But if it,
So, I mean, it's, if there are enough communities that
100 now, right?
that
What a-
push through. I mean, it's a chicken and an egg issue. It's getting washable bags and getting people to do what they used to do back in those good old days.
if it fails at town meeting, do you have to wait a certain amount of time before you bring
No,
it back?
that's only zoning bylaws.
Is this something you would put up to a populace advisory vote to see if the town wants
Next
it to go
April?
through town meeting again?
You just bring it to town meeting again, I think.
Yeah, because
It's
we're going to have
2020, we'd have primaries. You might actually get some showing at the polls. So,
I mean, I think we give it a rest for a year and see what the state does, and then maybe bring it back next year.
It's up to you guys.
I mean, whatever. I think also the recycling committee is working on it, though. I mean, they're trying to figure out, because we do have a crisis. We have a recycling crisis, and we have a plastic consumption crisis, so.
George, what do you want to do with plastic bags?
Let the state determine it.
Okay.
Wait and see what the state does.
So we'll give it a year?
Anyway, 10 citizens can come in and put it back on if they want to. anyway.
Right.
It's true.
The recycling committee
Yeah,
could.
Recycling committee, yeah.
Can we leave it on the list so we don't forget about it, but then put
Okay.
table till 2000, to the next administration?
You're gonna
Sure.
forget.
Sure.
Yes, I will forget.
I know
I
that's
forgot
your
my son's
goal.
birthday today. No, I'm just joking. So EPA stormwater, that's done.
Yeah, I don't think we have any choice now.
Right.
Comply with the new OSHA public safety requirements.
We have no choice.
It was a law, and it
Yeah,
got
yeah.
funded
I
at
think we
town
can pull
meeting.
They're more action items than goals.
All right, Mike, number 14. Speak to us.
We tried to contact several of the folks last year
that lived in the properties around there and had limited luck. Some of the owners lived outside of the country. I tried, that was unsuccessful. And then when we looked at going the other way, which would be eastbound, talking to conservation, there was too many trees that we would have to cut into. So we can make another effort. There was a situation that evolved with one of the owners at one point that inhibited us from going forward with that discussion. But there are some property owners up there that would be willing to work with us, but there's one that we need to get a little more information out of.
Is he or she a owner that lives locally?
Last I heard, well, the one that wants to work with us is local. The one is an absentee landlord who may not be living in the continental US at the moment, the last that we made an attempt to contact.
Can any extreme measures be taken?
That would be eminent domain.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how much fun that discussion would be, Ken? You hear that? Ken Lefebvre asking for eminent domain.
I did not. All
Phone's
right,
gonna start
so,
buzzing.
I can,
so you'll just
When-
refocus on it, maybe?
sure.
The more effective component of that is, and it was talked about a redesign of Vinyl Square. You know, the whole idea of doing the survey and then working with the state. That might, you know, if you make the T intersection, a few other things, that might help. 'Cause I think that's what the goal is trying to be, is the difficulty getting out of the parking lot.
Yes.
So-
Just for your information, I have a friend at the Vinyl Square meeting, so I am hoping to get some summaries of tonight's meeting at the Vinyl Square Committee, so.
All right, so that stays on the list. And 15 is gone.
Yeah, that's done.
All right, so now we're gonna add, so, let me just see, we have 1, 2, 3, roughly 6 that are staying.
9.
You want to list the numbers that are staying so we
Sure.
all know what they are?
1, 2,
1, 2, 5, 6, except that it's the effects, not the efforts.
yes, I'm sorry, 6, yep.
A version of 9 for the assessment. 10, 11, 14, and then I added 0, which is the vision and mission statement.
Okay, and now to add, we gotta get it back up to 15 now. So anybody wanna add anything?
That's
I
the set
have-
number, you're being facetious,
I
right?
am being facetious.
Okay, good.
I
But
have
before you
some
flip the page,
thoughts.
does anybody wanna add anything?
I have some thoughts.
Yes.
So let me take the 3 related to the economic development part. Is there anything that we want in the Board of Selectmen objectives in terms of helping from a town leadership perspective with the 129 efforts? I know you're the liaison, but if you're starting to bring CEOs or executive property owners in, how, and I might just not be aware of what we do, but how much do we do in terms of providing a leadership presence for those types of discussions? So just as an example that I use, like when I was a business development executive in the defense industry, I brought the admirals and the generals in. But the relationships were at the CEO level with, you know, or the vice president level. So are you forming those relationships? Do you have support from the selectmen to form them? Do we want that? And do we want anything like that? Since that corridor is so critical right now, do we want anything to that effect in the objectives to keep it in front of our noses?
It's part of Lisa's job, right? And she's doing a really good
I mean,
one.
Well,
I think
that-
it depends on circumstances. Like when Kronos was
It
here.
would be support to Lisa.
Right, but when,
Not-
like, when Kronos was here, George was very involved because he knew Aaron Ains, and so, you know, we utilized George. Went to school with the CEO of DCU, I mean, so, you know, so I have a relationship there. In some cases, like you said, we bring in the EDC, myself, I mean, the problem is we don't have, that hasn't arisen as a problem in recent years. I think the last big one was with Kronos. For example, if something's going to take place at UPS on Brick Hill Road, we're not going to deal with the CEO of UPS or we're really going to deal with whoever's been assigned that responsibility. And a lot of what we do in the 129 corridors has to do with the brokers, in the firms. And when we were successful with the Zoll discussions, we had that level of communication. So I guess it's a long-winded way of saying, Virginia, I think it's sort of on a case-by-case basis in terms of what's the particular, what's going on out there. And like, for example, what you heard happened at 330 Billerica Road, town meeting, that whole idea of the drive-through and everything else. I mean, that was with brokers, owners, and, the Economic Development Committee, myself, Evan, Michael, Lisa, and so forth.
Yeah,
So
I guess my thought was that we seem to be at another inflection point. We got the grant, and we're having the study output come.
Mhm.
And is there, and 129, is in this urgent state right now. It keeps declining instead of thriving, and we've got a lot of the right kinds of things going on. So should we think bigger in terms of pulling out the stops, or in terms of getting more support behind your team?
Can I just add a little
Sure.
light to this? So when I first came into office, I was invited to a lot of the meetings, up in Paul's office, where a landowner came in, or a business, or one of the building owners came in, or a potential business came in, or I know Beer Brothers or whatever they were, Beer Bros, came in and made a presentation about why we're a good fit for a beer pub or a distillery. That stopped, and I don't know why. I think whatever the reason, but I will say it was a little awkward because the room was packed. When you went around, we met in Paul's room, and you go around the table and you have Paul and Mike and Lisa and Evan and then me, there's almost not enough seats if 2 or 3 members from whoever comes in. So to that end, I think it would be nice if we had a formal conference room instead of, no knock to your office, Paul, but I don't know if there's any way we
Well,
can.
we have met across the hall in the large table there. On
I agree.
200, yeah.
I just wish it was better presentation. When you go in there and you get the file cabinets, and there were boxes stacked up with the air conditioning leaking on them, and you put a curtain up on the bookcase, but before that there was all kinds of papers stacked, falling off. I just think it would be a nicer room. I don't want to say roll out the red carpet, but roll out the red carpet. So you're coming into a nicer presentation. I do think EDC sometimes feels like they don't have the town support. They feel like they're the bad guys in the room a lot. And I'm wondering, that to that end, how do you show them, the support from a town standpoint? And one of the conversations that came up was, do we have our house in order? Do the chairmans of the different boards sort of understand where the town's going and share the same vision and want to move together and know that, we each have each other's back, so to speak, so that we're not hanging each other out to dry. I don't know how to accomplish that.
I don't think that's a real problem, quite frankly. I mean, I'll ask Mike to tell me, but all the discussions and the projects that we've come across, I've never felt the pushback coming, the town doesn't have its act together. In fact, what we tend to be getting is favorable response saying, boy, you folks are proactive and you're ahead of it, you've got the zoning in place, you've got the efforts in place. And if you look at the issues of those who are leaving, it's issues beyond our control. I mean, if Analog's consolidating on the Wilmington campus, there's nothing that's going to keep them in Chelmsford. And we were there, with others in terms of, why they're relocating down to Burlington and so forth. I mean, and they come back and say, well, it's basically they need to go where there are amenities. And also they have to go where the talent is.
Paul, I'm not
Yeah.
knocking.
But
I'm not knocking the businesses leaving.
But in terms of people coming, we're not getting that sense either. I mean,
Right.
I think too often town meeting sort of reflect upon who was leaving and not all those who came.
Right.
And I think Omni Way was a perfect example of that. In terms of they filled all that space.
Well,
after
actually,
the
that's a
auction.
great message. Omni Way is completely full now.
Exactly.
Nobody in town knows that.
And there's some leading companies
Yes.
there doing some really important work, and
And I
they
think,
might not
that's
be
going to come out
household
with
names,
this.
but
I
they
think
are
that's
really
going to come out in the next
important.
couple of weeks with the.
But that's the type of support, like I think EDC, like I know they were on their heels about the drive-throughs, and they were like, this is this is not going to go well. But I want to, and if it's all working great, great. But if there's a way we can even support them even more, I'm just wondering if anything else can be done. That's all.
So,
Right.
129, there is
So
an-
maybe it's an objective to work with the EDC to see how we can help
Well, back to the question.
beyond just a liaison assignment.
Right. Back to the question I asked you. I mean, is it? I know years ago that it was common practice to have the chairs of the 5 boards come in and meet once, a few times a year. It doesn't have to be quarterly, but let's say 3 times a year. But how about we also make a habit of inviting EDC in to give us an update and ask what sort of input they need from us or help or any other backing, just
Sure.
to let them know that whatever they need, they
Yeah.
just, we're here to support them. And we don't know, we're not mind readers unless they bring it to our attention.
How
So
does
it-
the
so it-
Middlesex 3 help us, excuse me, Middlesex
Sorry.
Coalition?
I mean, they promote the region.
We get, pardon?
They promote the region.
I know that.
Yeah.
Did they give us, you get many leads out of that and things?
Not concrete.
We do need amenities down there. I think the amenities is what we needed more than tenants. I mean, if we get the amenities, I think the tenants will come personally, but that's.
So maybe if this is still on the table, maybe it's more an objective to strengthen the board's relationship with the EDC. Whether that's the quarterly reports, and then we feel
I
like,
just-
how does it go? It may be 129, it may be something else.
I just,
Right.
I don't object to that goal. I just didn't realize it was a problem. I mean,
I'm not
it-
saying it's a
no,
problem.
No, but if you list it as a goal, does that
I'm
imply that?
No,
it's
it doesn't,
No, we
no,
wanna
it implies
improve.
it's an opportunity.
All right, okay.
There's
So
no
this is-
knock
this
on
is
you,
not-
Paul.
this
No,
is
no,
not-
but I just-
You're at a level of
Yeah.
success, and I'm
No, no,
saying,
but I
can
just-
we help bring it
right.
to a higher level? There's no
And
problem at all.
that improving it may be praising their wins.
Yeah.
Omni Way is if they,
Amplify
they're-
the message.
Yeah. I mean,
Helping them
they've
get more
having-
visibility.
The EDC and Lisa are having great successes, and all
Right.
we hear about, all you read on Facebook, and all the public chatter is all about the failures. But
Right.
I
Some of
get
that
in
is
these
just-
arguments
It's
with
not,
people.
but see, this is where I guess it's not EDC and Lisa.
It's all of
EDC,
you.
it's all of us, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's why I don't see that there's a, but I think
But we want to
we can
promote
strengthen
that,
that.
so
Okay.
people know the
Right.
successes the town is having.
Right.
And so we're wondering, how do we do that and support it? And because the other thing that will happen is success fosters more success.
Mhm.
So if we're banging the drum, screaming about all the wins,
Yeah.
you might get another look by someone outside the town to say, well, if they're doing it in Chelmsford and I'm hearing about it,
Mhm.
maybe I should now look.
Yeah, I agree. So if you're gonna have this meeting with the chairs, it's the Board of Selectmen, the EDC, the Planning Board, and who else?
Well, so it's planning board,
Finance Committee?
finance,
What, Finance Committee?
school. Do you want school there? They're one of the main 5
Yeah,
boards.
that's a huge draw for.
So the 5 major
for
boards are the BOS, the school, finance, EDC,
Health,
and planning.
planning.
All right.
Do you want the Board of Health there, or does that?
Well, then where do you keep going?
Yeah, I don't- yeah,
Conservation
I'm
Commission,
not-
do you stop going,
Do
I'm
we-
not stepping on
do
any
we-
toes, but I
do
think
we
those are the
fold-
5.
I don't want to belabor this, but I have one other question that's related. Are we currently looking at how we encompass, like our cultural and our open space and the other things that we offer into the economic development message? So for example, there are towns like Lexington, and granted, they're more of a tourism spot, but they take a conscious look at how does all that play into the economic development message. And they look at how do they bundle the tourism aspect along with the amenities and everything they're doing for the businesses to bring the draw.
What are the
To the
fun
town.
things for citizens? What are the races? What are the
So the only reason I'm
concerts?
bringing it up is if we're having this meeting, is there somebody from cultural council or open space or somebody that,
What?
at least it's a courtesy invite or
Right.
something?
I think the gems in this town, when you, as you're saying that, is the 4th of July parade, right, in road race. I mean, we're
Right.
just so well known for that. It attracts people from all over the world. You have Friendship Park, you have Hart
Freeman
Pond, you have
Trail,
Freeman
the-
Trail.
right.
You have, and I spent the good part
And
of
you've
Sunday at
got a
Sunny
lot of
Meadows. That is an
historical
incredible place.
buildings and things.
Right. So yes, I think, but.
and the
that-
CCA.
But maybe that's something I bring up at
CCA.
EDC to talk about, how do
Okay.
you promote that?
Yeah.
Yeah, the CCA, again.
And how do you,
fantastic.
and again, it's amplifying the message. And so what I heard, what I've heard from other towns that have had success in drawing more people in. So first of all, about 129, there are apartment complexes set to go up, right? Is there a cluster of housing there?
What, on 129?
129?
They've already been, Princeton's up, and then.
Or are you talking about Turnpike?
Yeah, Turnpike.
Am I thinking
Which backs
Turnpike?
up against 129, the 186 units
Yeah.
on Turnpike.
So, I mean, you're- so- So what they found was that bringing people first and then commercial base, that's the order. Commercial follows people. So if you have consumers,
Right, you
commercial
need foot
comes.
traffic.
So if you don't have the foot traffic, then
The car counts.
you know, and it's foot traffic, and foot traffic's huge. The walkability aspect is huge.
So what you're saying is we need more car counts.
No.
Okay.
Books and open space. But also in terms of festivals and bringing up cultural events, whether it's road races, whether it's inventing things, whether it's, you know, a beer tent at, afternoon event, whatever it is, like things that you can draw to get people in. Those are the things that when you have those festivals, those day-long sort of street festivals, for the weeks before and after, it bumps up foot traffic in the area, and it becomes a fairly steady source of revenue if you have regular events. So is there something that what is the cultural council doing in terms of, like, what effect can that have? Can we figure out ways to have more interesting events that bring people out and about?
I think where we landed, and you can correct me, is we'll consider that along with the interactions that Ken has as the liaison or we have with the Economic Development Council,
Mm-hmm.
but not as a specific objective, unless are you advocating that it become a goal? That's not what I was necessarily advocating. I was just suggesting that maybe they be invited to these sessions.
So if we want to talk about direction and mission statement and making Chelmsford all that it can be, do we want to look at the cultural events too, and what
Well, I think
draws people in?
I think it's top down. I think if we come up with a mission
Right.
statement and then we go out to our fellow liaisonships and say, this is what the board wants. An example is, what was the thing Lisa did last year with the whole downtown area with shopping? Was it Shop Chelmsford?
Yeah.
Small business Saturday, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a standard thing.
No,
small
but she had
business
one that was,
Saturday.
like the people that own the Artisan Exchange got involved and they came up with their own logo and they wanted to do like this special, something above and beyond that where,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in all the towns, they were trying to get them to buy, the stores down there, were trying to get them to buy into a special day. But that's something where if we as leaders say to the committees, this is what we're looking for, then we let them come up with the ideas and bring them to us.
You know, Northampton on the Saturday before Thanksgiving, so before Black Friday, Northampton does Bag Day. And if you have a bag that you buy from the local paper, like it comes in the local paper that day, all the stores listed on that bag give you 20% off an item or the whole purchase, depending on the store.
Right.
But it's like that discount. And the foot traffic spikes huge on Bag
That's-
Day
that's
because it's
something that
such
we
a
should-
That's an
known-
implementation.
Right, we should
Yeah.
let the
Let the-
cultural committee
Right.
or whoever kind
So
of
are
come up
you,
with these
are you
ideas.
trying to get people to think of ideas like that, to look at communities where they have such events that,
If committees in town want to come up with ideas like that and bring them to us, of course I would support them. But I don't think that would be a goal of ours.
okay,
I think we should let it be known that we're there to support ideas that would foster a sense of community and improve economic development in the town in any type of townmanship, you know, we would be here to support and
Okay.
let them come bring the ideas to us.
Right.
But we need to go out to our fellow boards and committees and let them know that that's, you know, a goal. And then we need to have some way to communicate it, because I think I'm always amazed when I start digging at how many things go on in this town that you don't know about until you actually go looking for it, and who's behind it and so forth.
Can I go have another idea,
Mhm.
if we're done with that one? I'd like to suggest that we have an objective, I'm not sure how to phrase it at this point, but something around being proactive with the outcome of the 2020 census as it impacts our town, because it's going to impact on 4 levels. It could impact at the congressional rep level, it could impact at the Senate rep level, and there's been conversations about, right now we're tied to a Boston corridor, and we're not really tied to any of the Merrimack Valley communities from a senator's standpoint. It goes to this whole question on 4 reps versus 2 versus 1, and then the 4th place that it goes is into the precinct definitions. And so I think we need to have something in our objectives for the coming fiscal year around that census that's going to be done. I know there were suggestions about committees in the past, and I spent a little time with some of the past members. And so, like, one thing that could be considered is establishing a committee with representation from the Democratic Town Committee, the Republican Town Committee, the schools, somebody from the Town Hall office, somebody from the Board of Selectmen, and a couple of citizen reps. Because this is something I think it's going to take many hands and heads together to figure out how we effectively work that in Boston as the census data comes out, and to know how that census data could positively or negatively impact the representation that we have today through Congress, Senator, and state reps.
I feel like Tricia
So-
would have
You-
some
I'd-
ideas around
I'd
that.
like
Some of us
to
have
put
lived through
something-
this.
I know,
Yeah,
and
what I-
since it's coming up again, the suggestion was that,
We look at it again.
right, that was 10
Well,
years
well,
ago,
well,
so
let-
now
let
it's
me
coming up
Let me
again.
explain what happened. First of all, the only thing that's going to happen in the next 12 months is the count.
Yep.
The March
Right.
1st census count. And I don't believe the last time, 10 years ago, Chelmsford was undercounted. So I don't think we have a challenge that you'd have in a more urbanized area with different languages and so forth. But we'll be promoting, along with everybody else, the 2020 census. Where it goes from there, the precinct thing is we own. We will have to submit, when they do the 2022, we will submit the precinct thing, the precinct layouts. And again, that's basically driven on the count numbers that come back. And that's basically a mapping tool. And the whole idea, and I think we did it right the last time, 10 years ago. I mean, I heard very little pushback in terms of the geographic boundary of precincts. We obviously use the highways and areas of natural boundaries. When it comes to the issue of congressional or legislative setups, I mean, like I said, I lived it. I was at the hearing, at meetings at the State House, and also the hearing in Lawrence, which was the closest one they had here, when we fought for our own, for a unified state rep, and so forth.
I did it in 2000.
And I
Right,
did it in
right.
2000. And I'll tell you, first of all, it's 3 years away, a couple years away. But second of all, it's not quite gerrymandering, but it's basically people who unless there's an external focus or an event that's going to change the districting, it's not going to happen, because these are people who are entrenched as incumbents, and they
They run unopposed.
they run unopposed. And when you make the case, well, we feel we're underrepresented, they come back with, well, we can give you an example of a community in the South Shore where the member holding the seat is of the community that has a smaller population than the remainder of the district. And that's basically, they basically just push you off. And so I heard Paul Regazio when he came here, and again, I heard him 10 years ago, and yes, there are desires. But I just want to
But
inform the board, it's not a question of, we don't have enough people, we don't know what we're doing, the bottom line is, it's the way the system runs. And yes, we sort of say, well, gee, we're at the tail end of a Senate district, and we're 4 reps, and then they come back with data, and as most things like happens at the State House, they come out and announce the plan, and then you respond to it.
So there's a community, I guess, that cares about watching this at least, and would it be prudent to at least say that we're going to monitor what happens, possibly just put this committee in place? Maybe we're not saying a priori this is the outcome we want them to get to, but at least to help look at what options are and come before this board to say,
What are they gonna do in the next 12 months, I guess is my question.
well, it may not be, so maybe they're in place for longer than 12 months.
No, but what
But
would
if
they
the-
what would they
if
do
the
over the
initial
next, what would they
census
do over the
data-
next 12 months is what I'm asking.
What's their
What's
task?
their task over the next 12 months? What's their mission statement the next 12 months? Because they're not gonna do the count till March of 2020.
Right.
They're not
You're
gonna
have
meet
the
once a
data.
month
You're not gonna have
for,
the
you
data
know.
until, probably 2021. So I just don't know what this group's going to do. Other than, get together and say, geez, wouldn't it be nice if we had, if we shared a Senate district with other greater Lowell communities. It wouldn't be nice if we had a Chelmsford person in a majority district for a state rep. I guess I'm trying to do is I don't want to, the worst thing you can do is form a committee and then have them do nothing. And then have the meetings be unproductive and then it goes nowhere.
And then it reinforces
So I'm
the
not,
idea
I'm not
that
saying
you
I'm
don't do
opposed to it,
anything.
Jeannie. I just don't know what this, I think the task is here is what's the 2019-20 goals for this, and I just don't know what this committee's gonna do in the next 12 months.
For my own edification,
Yeah.
what you're saying is that the census is going to happen, the outcome's going to happen. We have no control over what the results, the outcome.
No, I'm saying is the lobbying really doesn't begin till probably 2021.
So, okay.
That's what I'm saying. So I don't
What
know
I'm-
what the committee's gonna do in
What I'm
2019,
wondering is if,
2020.
because we do this with clients, when they come in the door and we start talking to them, and before they get to, retirement, and their company tells them what their options are going to be, we'll lay them out for them. Well, if this is, here are your options, and depending on what they offer you, here's what we're going to take. And I think what Virginia is saying is that's what we want to know. Like, if they come back and say, your census count is this, what are our options? If it's this, what are our options? If they do that, what are our options? So we're not then convening a committee to figure out.
All I'm saying is I
or
think you're
even-
12 months premature.
But
Okay.
no, or even if they don't start anything until January, February, March, you've got a roll on it. You're working proactively before the 2021
No,
crunch hits,
so-
if we
so
decide we want to do
All I'm saying is if you're
something.
doing this a year from now, I'd say, yes, that should be the goal. I just
So
don't know
Paul
what they
says
do
we're
over the next 12
premature.
months.
So because the next time we set goals are going to be next May.
Right.
Why don't we make it a goal now to have the committee start in January of next year?
Right, or at least start
Still
the
think-
conversation in January of when the right time to put them in place is, because you don't want to wait too long.
Again, I'm not gonna stand in your way. It's your goals. I'm just saying is that, you.
When would you ideally start it?
You do it a year from now. It's not complicated. I mean, and you've got the body of work from the previous two decennial, redistricting from a year ago. I mean, you bring John Curlin and, and John can explain, he was the chair at the time. I think, Pat, you were on the board. And I think George was here, right? I mean, it wasn't because you didn't know what we were doing. I think it was more of a question of what we were up against.
And you're gonna be still up against it,
Yeah.
you got 4 people gonna be.
But all I'm saying is I don't think you need 12 months of advanced lead time to pull that together.
You got 4 people gonna
You
have to give up.
start looking at it at the
district,
end of this fiscal year.
They don't even have to run now. I mean, they gotta do it, a couple of them don't even have to run. They're automatic, because no one's gonna beat 'em. No one from here's
Well,
gonna.
no one's gonna run,
Right.
so.
You need somebody in town, in Boston, you know what I mean, with some real juice to get to start working on somebody. That's what you need. And I don't know if there's anybody in town that can do that, but.
Again, establish the goal. I'm just trying to give you the insight that I've had living through this, and George and Pat, who lived through this a decade ago. It's, all I'm saying is my concern is if you appoint a committee and then they flounder because there's nothing they can do.
Maybe it's to track the census progression, and we look at the committee later the fiscal year, in the
It's gonna be
fiscal
national
year.
news. There's
rather
gonna be
than-
nothing to track. It's gonna be a Google search and you're gonna pull it all up quickly.
I had a call this last week from one of them about something else, and I said to him, we would like to, start talking about it. What is your feeling about it, you know what I mean? Oh, that's 4 years away, and blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying, wait a minute, I mean, I just got the feeling that don't even bring it up, because I'm not gonna, somebody gets 3 districts, 3 precincts here, no one here's gonna run against them somewhere else, so. There's 2 of them that have 3 precincts, right?
And the biggest thing that's gonna happen the next year is promoting the 2020 census and also explaining to folks that the format's different this time. The old traditional format is gone, where you'd get a census in the mail or delivered to your house. Now the initial responses are electronic. So they're basically going to, want you to respond that way. Then if they don't get any response, then they come out and come to your door. So I think that's going to be, it's really an educational thing about how you get people to respond in a timely manner a year from now. Literally a year from now, because they don't respond in March, then you want them to be responding in April and May. But again,
So maybe that-
form the committee. I just want to give you insight as to what we know and what we're hearing and what we experienced.
Same way we do the Day on the Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Every year, I went for the first 7 or 8 years I was here, and just for the school, right? And we went in with, 5 cars full of people. We went in, we met with the Speaker of the House, the Chairman of the Ways and Means in the House. We went up with them all, had lunch with them, went to their individual offices. We met with our senator who asked Angie Toronto to explain Chapter 70 to him, okay? Which, that's a true story. I mean, and Angie will back it up. We're sitting in Tommy Golden's office, and our senator comes in, and he says, Angie, will you do me a favor? Will you explain Chapter 70 to me? That's the guy that we're depending on for our funds for our schools. That's what you're up against. When they're down there, forget it.
Paul, are you suggesting that promoting the census is something that we should help you with, or is that something that's?
I think in this community,
I think
statistically, you're going to
the
get
issue
it.
of promotion is the concern about undercount.
Right.
And I don't think we've had that issue
No.
in Chelmsford.
We would need to do that in Lowell or Methuen
Yeah,
or
exactly. If we're in a
Lawrence.
more urbanized area or an area that has more language difficulties, I think you'd have that, Virginia.
Or
I
more
just-
perceived,
More perceived.
other issues in terms of ethnicity. Like you're gonna, like in this community, the demographics are such that you're gonna get a 90,
Because the other big
80%
focus also
turn.
counting college students, counting homeless and so
Yep,
forth.
and we don't have college students, so.
Well,
We what?
You don't
of
have.
course we do.
We don't have, well, we do, but we don't have like a
Oh,
college
oh, we
here
don't have
where it's not a
college.
huge chunk of our population. If we had like UMass Chelmsford, it would be a different situation, but it's not.
Okay.
I mean, you can form a preliminary committee or an initial committee. I just want your
I
expectations.
don't know if it's a committee, an objective, or nothing. Is it anything that
You have
you
to
want
do
to keep
something.
you
I
want to
mean,
keep in front of you on the list?
I am willing to bet the census will be on all our minds next year.
Okay.
Given the issues that have arisen already and the challenges already to its formatting, I am sure we'll all be neck deep in all of the issues, whatever comes up and whatever doesn't. So,
I hesitate to, I will agree with Paul, putting together a committee and then not having progress
it's
will kill
frustrating.
the committee.
Yep.
And then to ask them to reconvene later when nothing got done, you'll get like 10% back.
Okay.
So I'm just,
but we
I'm
can put
sort of
the
relying
liaison
on-
Together then from the board to try to get the ball rolling, making some inroads so that when the committee is formed, then maybe there's some key people they can contact. Maybe they can develop a couple of connections we don't have already.
To what?
No, but the only difference this year is, as you noted, is in 2010, there was no presidential election. In 2020, there is a presidential election because the calendar falls. So I think you're right, there will be a lot of attention in terms of.
I mean,
Be
would
a
it be,
ton, especially because it's already been challenged. Like some of the ideas that this administration has come up with around the census are already being challenged. So it's going to be national news and it's going to be on the front page. So
would we be better off having a committee that is more of a reach out to our current reps on a consistent basis? That maybe
that's
puts,
just us.
I know that's us, but I'm wondering if we had I don't know.
No, but that's us. We are that committee.
I agree, but we can't, all 5 of us, go and meet with a,
There are other people in town who meet with them regularly.
No, but I'm in pretty regular contact with Tammy Govea. I run into her pretty regularly. If I have a question, she's extremely responsive. I feel like if stuff comes up, and stuff has come up, and I've gone and checked in with her to ask her about different things, and, that's us. We are the liaisons.
I would think, Ken, that would really take place following the 2020 election, because then those reps will be the ones voting on the redistricting, and you'll know who they are, and they're not in a race for
I'm just
election.
spitfiring.
No, but I just want you to understand how
Spitballing.
that would work,
Spitballing.
because
Spitballing.
yeah.
Have the committee assignments been made for this year?
Yes.
Already?
Yeah.
And what's the strongest committee member in the Greater Lowell area out of the four?
Tommy Golden, he's chair of the Energy Committee. He's the strongest.
What did Dangle end up with?
I-
You know, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head.
Actually,
and-
Dangle's
and,
got
yeah,
more
they're all, and they
connections
all,
than
they
the
all,
other
they're all in
eight.
pretty good position. I mean, Jim Arcero's got some good positions as well.
Yeah.
And ways, and Tammy's new, so that's the challenge she has is she's low in seniority.
But she's come out with several policies.
All right, so where do we sit with this?
Can I just ask a couple other ones? So, I've had a lot of suggestions coming in from different angles about communications. And I'm wondering if we should just put an objective onto, I don't know if it's a committee or if it's like a couple of us sitting down with Paul and saying, what can we do better? But communications having to do with a number of different areas and how do we get things out there? Whether it's social media or newspaper or whether it's some opt-in thing on the website. But I think we should look at how do we ramp up and over-communicate.
How do you measure that?
How do you measure that?
Voter turnout,
No.
participation.
I only say that because if it's going to be a goal, we got to be able to measure it. And I'm just wondering how you measure communication better.
I don't know that you have to
I don't know if you-
specifically measure it, because I think that'd be difficult, but I
I think it
agree.
would be to assess the way that we communicate now and see what other improvements can we put in place. And it's probably a smaller conversation at first, at least. But it's a recurring theme that I hear.
Over.
When was the
And-
last time the website was redesigned?
It gets redesigned every fourth year, and because by the contract, so it's probably up for redesign in the next 12 months.
Could that be part of that committee?
I have folks who are begging
But
to
the-
do something with that website.
Yeah, it needs it needs a new format. There's no question.
Yeah.
The
So-
problem you have now, though, is you have fewer people in traditional media, i.e., local media. We're very we've been very hesitant on social media because we don't want to get into the debating
Right.
issue and the public records problems of social media. I think the board a couple years back had a social media policy because one of its own members was sort of, I think the board felt, right, George is nodding, and Pat, they felt like the board needed its own policy on how to respond to social media. Because I think in many instances, social media, it's a means of communication, but it often is not an effective means of communication in terms of if you're going to get in a,
I think that depends on who's doing the communication.
well, but I think that's the problem,
Yeah.
and I think that becomes the issue. And then that was an issue for the board, that the board adopted a social media policy.
I think it depends on
And I also
who is
think,
doing it.
but I also think the other problem is the changing nature of society. That as much as, believe me, we don't enjoy sitting in this building hearing people say, we didn't realize,
Right.
because, there's two sides to that equation. It's what the town's putting out, it's also the fact that people have to be somewhat active on their own to obtain information. And I think that's the part that we haven't been able to cross is how do you engage people who aren't looking to be engaged?
But I think that that's not fair, and I think that the
I think it's
issue.
accurate,
No, I don't think it is, because the website is nearly impossible to use. The fact that you're downloading PDFs instead of just finding the information,
So without-
So I think that by putting up barriers and by refusing to engage and by refusing to do a deep examination.
Oh,
of-
you've made a lot of statements there that I didn't say. We refuse to engage, we refuse the website. All I'm saying is, any commercial thing now isn't come to our website. I don't think there's a generation under the age of 30 that goes to a website anymore.
No, they
So-
don't.
Exactly, so we
And
can't
I've
sit there and say.
sent you
So without-
links to what
Exactly.
other towns do, and there are town Twitter accounts out there that
Without
are
jumping
highly
into
successful.
implementation
Yeah, but we
here,
have Twitter.
my thought
Yep, I
was,
do.
is there a simply stated objective that says that we will assess our communication vehicles and community engagement, period,
Yep.
Yeah.
and not try to solve it here?
Right.
Yeah.
But I think
Because
it's-
I think there's probably some things worth looking at from both ends.
But I think as Ken says, how do you measure it? Because I agree, the police department does a great job. If there's an accident on Main Street and the road's closed,
I think-
they shoot that out.
Well, you can
No,
imagine.
no, but I
think.
think you measure that objective by saying, okay, well, here's what we found. Here's what we looked at. here's where we think maybe we should make some changes, here's where maybe we could make some, or need help improving community engagement. It's more the initial assessment, and then you figure out what you're going to implement and what you're going to measure. I think there's opportunities in a number of different areas that could be considered.
So as a goal,
And-
just as a broad-based goal here.
And I think Paul has a valid point, too, about how do you get people to engage
Correct.
with that, so.
So maybe it's just a assessment and review of the current.
Yeah, I mean, it might just be a couple of
Policies
us sitting
and-
down in his office for a little bit and looking at what we've got, and then figuring out if we need to do anything more, or,
Right.
you know.
I will
do we
say,
need-
when you get a call the day of town meeting, and a town meeting rep says, hey, what time's the meeting tonight? And I said, it's on the website. I can't find it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
it's right.
I mean,
And I said something to Pat, she said, it's on the main page. I pulled it up on my phone. It wasn't, like,
It
the
was
first
on the
thing.
main page.
It was on my computer, but on the phone, it wasn't. The first thing that comes up is the
Most
calendar,
people
and
don't
it's
have
not on the calendar.
desktops.
Right.
That's
And to
a.
find it was very difficult.
And there's other things, too, like, zoning changes. Could you opt in to just be notified of anything within a 5-mile radius of your house,
Well, that's the whole town.
right?
Yep.
Well, yeah, but that's what people want.
But we
Because
do
they-
have,
'cause
we
they-
do have that subscribed. In other words, if you want to receive every agenda of the Board of Selectmen, there's an opt to do
Right,
that.
so,
Right.
but what we're saying is now we have to let people know how to do that.
Right,
Right.
and maybe help
I mean,
promote
like
that
the
there are
recycling
ways to do
flyer
it.
is fantastic. The recycling flyer sits in my drawer, and most people I know keep that recycling flyer for the
Yeah.
whole year. And it sits in the drawer so that you go, it's spring. I know there's a chemical
Yeah.
drop-off. What day is that? And so you have it to go to.
Yeah.
I think that's the type of stuff we need to
Okay.
get in front of people.
Okay.
Some
And
of
then-
that stuff, if you go to the website, just because I wound up using it quite a bit in directing people to it, there's a section called Find It Fast on one of the top menus. It has a lot of things like the recycling flyer and a lot of other useful information right there.
No, there's no question we have to revamp the website and make it more portable device friendly. There's no question on that.
So evaluate and assess communications,
And community engagement.
in communications and in community engagement.
And then with all the time Mike's spending on traffic, is that anything that needs to be in the objectives?
What do you put? I feel like it's
How do you
a
measure it?
whack-a-mole sort of situation.
Yeah.
The problem is here. Okay,
Continuing
we've solved
to
that.
work.
Okay, now it's over here. It's such an ongoing problem, and it's so fluid.
Yeah, but there's always been a couple hot spots that just seem to rear their head
Yeah,
over and over again.
It's not an easy thing to solve.
no.
Well, and I think we don't need to solve it, we need to address it, which sometimes addressing just is explaining why we can't do anything about it, and maybe other
I mean,
options.
how much of an effort did we did on the Golden Cove thing, right?
Right.
And where'd it get us? Nowhere.
Yeah, we put a, we
Matt,
put a, we
I think
put
Matt
a,
Hanson was chair at the
put a
time.
rule out there, and 2 days later, we got a letter saying we can't do it.
So I mean, that's the frustrating. I think probably the biggest thing you need is a civics course for the whole community, understanding how local government works and what you can and cannot do, because most people don't understand how local government operates in Massachusetts. They
Yep.
seem to think that we have more authority than we do.
I mean, some of that is because civics was pulled out when MCAS went in, so you've got an
But it's a
entire
real frustrating
generation.
thing that, they think we can just do, close roads, set speed limits, do
Well,
detours.
Look what happened this year. People show up at the Board of Selectmen, and Board of Health issues and everything else, thinking we have the final say. And
Right.
I mean, some of that was because there was a lot of finger pointing and passing the buck between boards, and then they got frustrated and they came. So,
And then the only other thing I had was, Paul, is there anything that this body can do to help? We keep talking about trying to increase our state funding, whether that's grants or something else. I knew that was going to create a laugh, but
we could win the lottery and donate the proceeds.
no, I mean,
It's the same, it
if
goes
you
back,
don't,
no, but it
if
goes
you don't
back to
keep
my.
it in front of
but
you,
goes-
it doesn't.
No, but in all seriousness, it goes
Right.
back to the
Is there,
issue
are
of.
there creative things that?
No, but it all goes back to the question of information. There's this notion out there that Chelmsford's getting the short end of the stick in local aid. And the reality is if you go look at communities that are similar to Chelmsford, let me finish. You look at the communities that are similar to Chelmsford, we're not in a disparate state. What happens is you find the outlier, such as Westford, and then they say, well, look, Chelmsford's getting the short end of the stick, and if we had one rep, that would all go away. And the problem with the local aid thing is it's beyond a local issue. It's a question of revenue. right? I mean, let's call it what it is. The question of, and that's the big question that's at the
And-
State House right
Yeah,
now.
one of our local area reps just voted down new revenue measures. So,
And-
we
and
could
the-
be helping.
And the problem comes down to is all the focus that's out there on education aid and so forth isn't meant to assist communities such as Chelmsford.
Is it just a question of local aid though, or can we increase our things like grant funding, or are there other sources that we
We
can
do
help
awesome
with?
at grants.
You've brought up state funding before too. What did you, trying to increase state aid or state funding?
Well, yeah, my suggestions were local option taxes.
Okay.
I think if we could get some other,
Right, which
But I don't
the
know what they would
legislature
do.
thus far has refused to act upon.
Right.
There were notions for local option gasoline excise tax. There were options to increase the local meals tax. All those, there was, local.
Not the meals tax.
No, but I'm just saying, all those items went.
Poor
and
Ken.
The legislature just isn't going there.
So,
And
and this may,
it's frustrating.
this may click back a little bit under the communications again, because I don't think people realize the amount of grants we get.
Right.
And I think that's another thing we should be amplifying,
Yeah.
because our department heads are incredible grant writers. The
Yeah.
stuff they get, and it's sometimes just $10,000 here and there, but when they're getting essentially whatever, a free generator because they wrote a request and they got it, that's huge. And I think that we should be bringing that up and lauding them. I think someone should be taking their 5 minutes at town meeting, or, using the bully pulpit to actually say, this is what our department heads have been doing, just to show how hard they work at that.
Just the pulpit.
So, again, as an example, I think the amount of time that Lisa's freed up for Evan,
Yeah.
Evan's written grants,
Yeah.
and more than covered her pay every year.
Yeah.
It's that type of forward thinking that you've leveraged someone's time to, Evan's doing, I'd like to see a total, but I think it's well over 300,000 in grants in the last year.
Oh, yeah.
It's been significant.
But that's all stuff that I think that needs to be communicated out.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think sometimes too, it is depending, I feel like in some ways we're a figurehead, but we're also the megaphone, and we can choose what to amplify and what we can bring to the table. And I think what the school committee does with its good news thing, where it has a school come in and present, I feel like if we could do that with the departments here and just say, we're checking in this week with the police department, we're checking
That's
in
not a
next
bad
time with
idea.
the fire department, and just have them state the things that they have done that are positives. And I think that sort of tenor and messaging, because it's factual, and it gives people something to go on where they can say, oh, but look at all the good things that are happening. And I think that is an important aspect.
So, to recap, I got to evaluate and assess communications and community engagement. Did we add anything after that now? Did we decide anything on roads? Did we
No, I
decide
don't-
anything on
I don't think.
grant
we-
writing?
I think beyond general goals of amplifying the message and just making sure it's announced and
but it
promoted.
usually is. Almost every time when we do get a grant, we hear about it in town manager reports, and maybe we need to also publicize that more other ways, but we always hear about that. Every time
I'm
we
sure
get-
everybody watching knows about it.
66 people, yeah.
That's
I
right.
mean,
And you make
honestly,
that
and that's
joke, but
part of
there
the
you
problem.
go.
You're joking, but that is part of the problem.
That's right, exactly.
It's 66
It's
people.
It's 66 people, so, oh my gosh, we have 34,000 people. How do
That
we
don't know
push
we
that
got
out
grants.
there?
Right.
You know?
Like
So-
a video game.
So that goes back to the communications.
Uh-huh,
We
it's
need a reader
huge.
board on Town Common. Just
Can we
joke
do
about-
it? Little solar light?
Can you imagine? All right, so if you want to add to this or clarify it with Paul, let's leave it there. But as far as I know, the last one that we added was the community engagement / outreach. Any other that we're making part of the list?
This one, it kind of has to do with policies. I think something we need to add to our policies, and that has to do with something that's been brought up a couple of times, and it's brew pubs and tap rooms. We have nothing as far as and I think we need to be proactive on that, because
Oh.
we have people that are
Committee.
working, that are actually working on doing something like that. But if they were to come to us and say, okay, what are the rules and regulations? We have none. But that is in our purview to do that, to set those rules and regulations. So I think we need to be proactive and do that, and define what they are, and set up
Find
regulations.
the policy for them,
Say that again?
define the policy for group
Do you
policy.
want me to
Right.
work on that, since I have a certain
your blood.
amount of overlapping?
You know, as a side note, at
Expertise.
Sunday Meadows on Sunday, the 8 guys that were there that were building the greenhouse all said, we need a and I had explained to them, they wanted a brewery, a restaurant,
Okay, well,
and I had explained the differences. But I think that's important, because I think people think, well, you can just open up a brewery, have a restaurant,
and
and
you
You
can't.
can't, it's different licensing for
gotta have,
manufacturing and
right.
sales.
So, and people don't understand that, and so I think, you're right, I think the town is crying out for another.
I
And it's a
think-
good spot.
Establishment,
It
and there
is,
should be
it is a
policies for it.
really good spot for one. It absolutely
I-
is.
I
Brew
just think-
Brothers told us.
I just think we need to be ahead of the curve when it comes to, we don't want them to come in the door and then,
All right.
and then we say, well, we don't know, what do you want to do? We can't let them set the rules, we have to set the rules.
Well, there is no bar in town, so add a bar, is that what you're saying? No. You want to clarify the policies or put policies?
There is no
She's
bar.
saying there isn't
There
one,
are
so we
none.
need to
So
create one.
you want to create policies,
Yes.
create policies for,
Brewery tap room.
Brew pub and tap.
Yeah, licensing and regulations.
licensing and regulations of a brewery/tap room.
Now, some of that is already
Is
done
enough.
by the existing
I know, Mike.
regulatory bodies, but
Well, just like we did, recently, we did for the carry and, bring your own.
And I think maybe, worst case is the word gets out that we're doing this, and
There you
maybe
go.
someone goes, wait a minute, Chelmsford wants one? I'm in.
There you go.
Okay. All right. Anything else, George? You want anything?
you sure?
Anybody?
Well, all
So we're
mine
good?
others were covered, so.
So you have notes, you're good?
We'll bring you back, we'll send you a draft.
All right, so that is number 6. There's gonna be a 6A. Your liaison reports. We noticed that was not on here tonight.
It wasn't meant to be a regular meeting.
I know, but there are some people who wanna talk about it.
Sure.
Yeah, there's just a couple things I want to mention. I don't know if, can I go?
Yeah, sure.
My turn. All right, want to welcome home Sergeant Jake Maniscalco. You may have seen the welcome home banners up for him a couple of weeks ago, and we are glad that Sergeant Jake Maniscalco is back and has returned safely. Also wanted to mention, last week, a former member of the Board of Selectmen passed away, Stu Weisfeld. I'm sure a lot of people here knew him. Going to miss him. He was definitely a character and an all-around nice guy, so just wanted to mention those two things. The others can wait.
Okay. So with that,
I will make a motion to adjourn to executive session, not to return to open session, to discuss retaining outside labor counsel regarding threatened litigation relating to an arbitration process before the Joint Labor Management Committee.
Aye.
Second.
Aye.
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 All right. Have a good night.